When historians look back at the last 8 years, they're going to evaluate one of the most secretive administrations in the history of the United States. Now, the citizens of this country have said we should have change, and we should. But we also know the past can be prologue for the future unless we set things right. The last administration, there was a justification of torture. It presided over the abuses at Abu Ghraib. It destroyed tapes of harsh interrogations. It conducted extraordinary renditions that sent people to countries that permit torture during interrogations. And they used the Justice Department, a premier law enforcement agency, to subvert the intent of congressional statutes, even to subvert nonpartisan prosecutions, to use them in a partisan way to try to affect the outcome of elections. And they wrote secret law to give themselves legal cover for these misguided policies, policies that could not withstand scrutiny if brought to light. Now, nothing has done more to damage America's standing and moral authority than the revelations that during the last 8 years we abandoned our historic commitment to human rights by repeatedly stretching the law and the bounds of executive power to authorize torture and cruel treatment. As President Obama said to Congress and to the American people last night, and I quote, "If we're honest with ourselves, we'll admit that for too long we have not always met our responsibilities." Now, the President said that about the economy, but also holds true here, that it's only by understanding how we arrived at this moment that we can move forward. How do we restore our moral leadership, ensure transparent government if we ignore what's happened? We even had some who tried to extract a devil's bargain from Attorney General Holder, saying that they wanted his vote for confirmation. He had to promise not to prosecute for anything that happened on President Bush's watch. That's a pledge no prosecutor should give, and to his credit, Eric Holder did not. There are others who say, regardless of the cost of time, resources, and unity, we have to prosecute these administration officials to lay down a marker. The courts are already considering congressional subpoenas that have been issued in claims of privilege and legal immunity. They will for some time. Now, over my objection, Congress has already passed laws granting immunity to those who facilitated warrantless wiretapping and conducted cruel interrogations. The Department of Justice, past administration, issued legal opinions justifying these executive branch excesses, which, while legally faulty, would undermine attempts to prosecute. A failed attempt to prosecute for this conduct might be the worst result of all. And given the steps Congress and the executive have already taken to shield this conduct from accountability, that's a possible outcome. But there is an alternative to these approaches. It's a middle ground. It's a middle ground I spoke of at Georgetown University a little over 2 weeks ago. That ground would involve the formation of a commission of inquiry dedicated to finding out what happened. The commission's objective would be to find the truth, and people would be invited to come forward and share their knowledge and experiences, not for the purpose of constructing criminal indictments, but to assemble the facts, to know what happened, but also to make sure mistakes are not repeated. I've seen what's happened before with prosecutions on these things. We don't find the full truth. We prosecute the people way down the bottom of the chain of command, but we don't find out what those above did. Former Vice President continues to assert unilaterally that the Bush administration's tactics, including torture, were appropriate and effective. But interested parties' characterization, self-serving conclusions, are not facts, and they're certainly not the unadulterated truth. And we can't let only those voices be heard, nor allow their declarations to serve as historical conclusions on such important questions. I'm talking about this process, what we can do with others in Congress, with outside groups and experts. I've begun to discuss this with the White House as well. I'm not interested in a commission of inquiry comprised of partisans intent on advancing partisan conclusions. Rather, we need an independent inquiry that's beyond reproach and outside of partisan politics. We've had some successful oversight in some areas, including harsh interrogation tactics and executive overrides of the law. But we, the Congress, is supposed to be doing this, have been kept in the dark on so many other things. My proposal for a commission would address the rest of the picture, which is to understand how these types of policies were formed and exercised. And I do this to make sure the mistakes are not repeated. A recent Gallup poll showed that 62% of Americans favor an investigation of these very issues, 62% of Americans. And respected groups, including Human Rights First and the Constitution Project, say the same. Thoughtful senators, including my friend and colleague from Rhode Island, Senator Whitehouse, my friend and colleague from Wisconsin, Senator Feingold, have also embraced the idea. The determination to look beyond the veil that so carefully concealed the decision-making in these areas is growing. And next Wednesday, the Senate Judiciary Committee will hold a hearing to explore these ideas and to continue the conversation about what we can do moving forward. 2 years ago, I described the scandals at the Bush-Cheney-Gonzalez Justice Department as the worst since Watergate, and they were. We're still digging out from the debris they left behind, while those in the last administration continue to defend their policies, even their illegal policies, knowing full well we don't even know the full extent of what these policies were or how they were made. We cannot be afraid to understand what we have done, if we're to remain a nation equally vigilant in defending both our national security and our Constitution. I hope all members of Congress will give serious consideration to these difficult questions. I would argue it'd be the quintessential American thing to do.